Hello friends, welcome to my channel Quiz and Storyline. Today, we will talk about one of the greatest train robberies of all time. What's truly remarkable about this robbery is that it was carried out without any weapons or guns, but through a simple trick that even left the Queen of England stunned. However, the biggest question is, how did this all happen? So, let's dive into this video to find out. My friends, this story is from November 27, 1962, when a group of men dressed in suits and ties entered a bank. Outside the bank, another man sat in a car, casually reading a newspaper. Inside, these men headed straight for the main toilet. In there, they met two other men who were already waiting. They exchanged looks, put on masks, and made their way to the ground floor. Meanwhile, the man in the car, who was none other than Bruce, the gang's leader, stepped out and headed toward the bank with a toolbox in hand. By now, you've probably realized that these men weren't here for a meal but to rob the bank. They immediately began using a long rod to break into the bank vault. After stashing all the money into a box, they hurriedly fled the scene. Once back at their hideout, they eagerly opened the box, only to find their expectations dashed as the amount of gold they stole was far less than anticipated. This brings to mind the saying, "They dug a mountain but found only a mouse." Disappointed, they had no choice but to plan their next robbery. To lift their spirits, they headed to a bar and enjoyed a good time with whatever little money they had. The following day, Charlie met a lawyer in Lincoln, who introduced him to Mr. Field. Mr. Field had grand plans but needed professionals for the job. He told Charlie about a Royal Mail train that ran daily from Glasgow to London. While this train mainly carried letters, it also contained a special high-value package, HVP, compartment, filled with stacks of cash, which were sent to different post offices along the way. Surprisingly, there was little to no security on this train, only a few postal workers, making it an easy target. Charlie shared this information with Bruce because they never executed a plan without Bruce's approval. Bruce, the mastermind, was on board with the plan. Bruce decided they would strike when all the money from various stations had accumulated on the train. They would stop the train near a bridge just before it reached the London station. However, they needed someone who understood railway signals and could tamper with them. This is where Roger, a florist with knowledge of railway signals, came into the picture. When he heard the plan, he immediately agreed but demanded that 3 more men join him, which Bruce had no problem with. Roger and Bruce then went to inspect the bridge where they planned to stop the train. They noticed 2 signals, one they needed to change from red to green and the other from green to red. Roger connected the first signal to a battery, which allowed him to control it, tricking the train operators. Meanwhile, Mr. Field and his lawyer friend went to a house in the woods near the bridge, which they wanted to buy to store the stolen goods. After negotiating, Mr. Field bought the house. Bruce and Roger then went to a train station because, before robbing a train, they needed to learn how to drive it. Although they managed to get the train moving by studying the instructions, they couldn't brake in time and had to jump off to save themselves. Fortunately, the incident didn't make the news, as such mishaps were often blamed on mischievous kids loitering around the station. However, Bruce realized they couldn't risk driving the train themselves, and they needed an experienced train driver for the job. Bruce's friend introduced them to a skilled driver named Philip, who then joined their team. This brought the total number of men to 15. With everything in place, they just needed one more person to provide information about the stacks of cash on the train, as this detail was confidential. Bruce and his gang were ready and waiting for the right moment. On August 7, 1963, Bruce received a tip that the Royal Mail train would leave Glasgow at 7 p.m. and arrive in London 12 hours later, at 7 a.m., carrying valuable goods. Among its 12 carriages, the last two would be filled with 128 boxes of cash, all securely locked and hidden so well that no one would suspect a thing. Hearing this, Bruce and his men sprang into action. At 7 p.m., the train left Glasgow on schedule. Meanwhile, Bruce's gang, dressed in military uniforms, arrived at the bridge in a military truck. Two members tampered with the railway signals, turning one to yellow and the other to red. At 3 a.m., with London just 40 kilometers away, the train approached the bridge. The driver stopped the train when he saw the red signal, allowing Bruce's men to board the train's rear carriages. Some of the gang members worked on detaching the passenger carriages, while others subdued the train driver. The elderly driver tried to get the train moving but failed to do so because the vacuum system wasn't functioning. They called in the second driver, beat him up, and forced him to try, but he also said there was no vacuum. It turned out that when they detached the passenger carriages, they had accidentally damaged the vacuum pipe. After fixing the pipe, the train finally started moving again. The train reached the bridge, where Bruce and the rest of the gang were waiting. Beneath the bridge were trucks ready to be loaded with stolen goods. The postal workers on board were fast asleep, as it was 3 a.m. Bruce's men quickly broke into the locked boxes using rods. In just 15 minutes, they formed a human chain and loaded all 128 boxes onto the trucks. Bruce decided to leave the remaining money behind. Before leaving, Bruce warned the train driver that if they alerted the police within 30 minutes, he would come back and deal with them. However, this was just an empty threat, as Bruce wasn't interested in harming anyone, he was only after the money. With the job done, the gang retreated to their hideout in the woods, where they had recently purchased the house. Seeing so much money for the first time, they couldn't contain their joy and started celebrating right there. They began counting the money, but Bruce, exhausted from 2 months of planning, went to sleep. When he woke up, he saw the room filled with bundles of cash. They spent the entire night counting, with each share amounting to £300,000. The sum was so vast that it was enough to turn anyone into a millionaire overnight. Bruce's heart raced as he realized they hadn't pulled off just any robbery but the biggest heist of that era, one that the government wouldn't take lightly. Though the elderly driver had caused some problems, Bruce knew he had executed a record-breaking robbery, and he was fully aware of the consequences that could follow. We hope you enjoyed this video. Please like it and subscribe to our channel. Thank you for your love and comments. See you in the next video.